You have all types of massive buildings around the world that have different types of usage. Like for example, the largest building in the world with the most amount of floor space is this stadium looking thing in China. It's called the New Century Global Center, and it's 1.7 square meters. To understand how much floor space this building has, you have to compare it to the Burj Khalifa, which only has 309,000 square meters of floor space. If you want to look at the heaviest building in the world, you gotta look at the Romanian Parliament building. And if you'd like to know more about this building, we have a complete video about it. Throughout recent history, the biggest office building in the world was the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. But just until a few months ago, this record was broken by another office building, the biggest office building in Surat in India. This office building has a floor space of 660,000 square meters, beating the Pentagon by 60,000 square meters. But why is an office building this big needed in the city of Surat? To understand this building, we first have to learn more about the city. You have to know that about 90% of the diamonds that are sold in the world pass Surat at least once. But the diamond is not extracted from this city because there is no mines. It actually comes here to be cut and polished. Because the best people in the business that do that are in this part of India. In the city of 7 million people, there is about 5,000 diamond workers that live all across the city. Then, all the diamonds that are cut and polished properly are sent into a center, and then after reaching that center, it goes to Mumbai, and after the city of Mumbai, it gets dispersed all throughout the world. Before this, sending the diamonds all across the city was a hassle because they were everywhere and the city is extremely crowded. And since you're carrying extremely valuable things, there is a chance of robbery. So the less you have to travel in a crowded city, the better. It is when a lot of people in this industry decide to unite with one another. Out of the 5,000 diamond workers in Surat, they decided to unite with one another to build an office building that could hold all of them in one location. Instead of being dispersed throughout the city, they can all work in one building and be together. And this is when the idea of the biggest office building came into mind. After this idea, they gave it a name too, the Surat Diamond Bourse. In simple terms, when the workday begins Monday morning, about 70,000 employees have to enter the building. Some people wanted to complain on why so much land was used on a building like this. Why didn't they just go up and build a skyscraper? Skyscraper sounds good on paper, but with something like this, with this amount of people going in and out, it's a hassle. Just imagine 70,000 people entering a skyscraper in the morning and trying to leave in the afternoon. How many elevators are needed so it doesn't create a whole lot of traffic where people are waiting for hours. This is why this type of idea was made, where the office buildings is laid out flat rather than go up like a skyscraper. One of the most important thing a diamond worker needs is a lot of light. Natural light not only makes the job easier, it also cuts down on the electricity costs. One of the main intentions of the design building is the maximum amount of natural light inside the building. And the most important thing is that the building is north to south, where there's a maximum amount of sunlight inside the building, especially in the winter. Just like we said, the natural light cuts down the electricity cost because you don't have to run so many lights to work. And another thing is that the city of Surat is a hot city and there's a lot of humidity. So keeping the building cool is very important. The spine of the building, which is the main section in the middle, is designed in a way where it sucks in the air breeze inside the building, cools it down by 50% and lets it out. This is kind of like a natural AC system where you saw in ancient times on how they cooled down a building in a very hot location like in the desert. But it still works in modern applications like this building. With this method, they cut down 50% on the electricity bill in terms of lighting and of course the AC system keeping it cool. And you don't need a heater in a location like this, so that helps a lot as well. One of the biggest challenges for this building is the parking, because every day about 70,000 employees have to enter it. The underneath has 5,000 car parkings and 10,000 motorcycles, because the majority of people will show up in a motorcycle. But the parking is laid out in a way where the person is pulling up to work. It will take them less than 7 minutes for them to park and go inside their office to begin working. It's very obvious that the people that designed this building are very business-minded and business-oriented. They didn't want to waste any time. The less time you spend waiting in line for the elevator or parking, the more time you have for work and making more money. Another thing that saves a lot of time is that throughout the building there are different types of coffee shops and restaurants. So if you want a drink or food, you don't have to leave the facility. There is also no waiting in lines for the elevator, because in this massive buildings there are 131 elevators spread out through it. Throughout history, the diamond workers of Surat used to work like this. They enjoyed working on the outdoors, sitting under a tree. That's why inside of this building is very reminded of the outside world. There's a lot of plants and trees everywhere, so the person working indoors does not feel depressed. When you work 30 years outside next to a lot of people and of course nature, you get used to that and you don't like office buildings, especially enclosed. So having green nature next to you helps out a lot. They broke ground on this building in the year 2017, and since the idea was there and the funding was also available, it was supposed to finish by the year 2020. But unfortunately, COVID hit and it slowed everything down. It slowed this building down about 3 years, which is why it was recently finished at the end of 2023. But even though it took 6 years to finish a building like this, it's extremely impressive because it is still the biggest office building in the world. You could say the diamond industry, especially the people that work in the Surat diamond industry, are very proud on what they did and they're glad that they united with one another. They also have plans on building apartment complexes for the employees that works inside this building. So for them, it will be a lot easier to go home and come back to work. But alongside all this good news, there are some bad news as well. And that's people in social media are beginning to realize that the diamond industry is overpriced. People are beginning to realize that diamonds aren't that rare and the prices are way too high. When you have a diamond that costs so much and it's much more common than, let's say, gold, they begin to question things. And that's why a lot of people believe that the diamond industry is failing and a building like this is not needed in the near future.